The Treasure Coast Lexus Studios, your home for Rudy Howard's African American Scene on WPSL. Treasure Coast Lexus, US 1, south of Midway Road.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, you are encouraged to like and share them on Facebook because it's time now for the African American Scene, presented by Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie and hosted by the one and only Rudy Howard.
Well, I don't know how I can top that, but good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for being here with me on a Wednesday night. You know I'm always glad to be here with you. Wow. Is there stuff going on? Woo. And we, at the close of the show last week, they hadn't conducted their vote yet on the Affordable Care Act, and they did, and it failed. That's interesting. So we're going to have an open mic tonight. Open mic night tonight. How about that? Did I get that? Open mic night tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
You got it.
And if you're listening to me for the first time, I throw out some topics, and then I encourage you to call in. But first, let me respond. Now, I've talked about this before, but I keep getting emails, and people ask me, why the African American scene? Is that prejudice, the African American scene? No, the answer is no, it's not prejudice. What it is I offer a show that nobody in this area is doing. There is not a single station anywhere in the Treasure Coast that has a show like mine. And what I endeavor to do is to give you some insight into how this black man feels about certain issues, which is an insight you wouldn't get without me talking to you here on Wednesday night. And you don't necessarily, I'm not looking for you to agree with me. Now, I've talked about this before. It is not a requirement for you to agree with me. But if I made you think about your position a little bit harder than you did before, I'm satisfied that I've done my job. So that's why we have the African American scene. And that's why it's been on for almost 9 years.
It's about perspective.
Yes.
Well, all folks, they don't have to agree with the perspective. They just have to hear it. Because otherwise, we have no idea.
That's right. And I have had people send me emails, people call me, and thank me for giving them a point of view that they had not considered. And that's all I'm trying to do each week, except that I'm talking about it from an African-American perspective. So if that really offends you that I'm talking about things from an African-American perspective, I will hope it doesn't, but you know what? You don't have to listen. I hope you would, but you don't have to. But because there's people out there now that have been following me for almost 9 years. So, and I hope you will continue to listen. Even if you curse at your radio while you're listening to me, that's allowed. That's perfectly okay. You can do that.
We don't talk back.
Right, exactly. Oh, and I know there's some people that listen pretty regularly that scream and yell at the radio when they're listening to me, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. So here is my topics for tonight. Topic number 1. Should Colin Kaepernick get a job in the NFL? I know you're familiar with that controversy. Should Colin Kaepernick get a job in the NFL? Now, topic number 2. How is supporting Trump consistent with your Christian beliefs?
Ooh. When you put it that way.
Yeah.
It changes part of the question.
Yeah. I know Steve will be out there boiling with that right there.
Wow.
How is supporting Trump consistent with your Christian beliefs? I want you to wallow around in that for a while. topic number 3. Should we end the fight to repeal the ACA? Should we just end that fight now, or should we try to make something happen? What do you think we should do? And on July 28th, 1917, there was a march on Fifth Avenue, New York City, called the Silent March. And that march was the same as Black Lives Matter. 10,000 African Americans marched down Fifth Avenue for justice and to stop the mistreatment of African Americans. I thought, and that's pretty interesting. That was July 28th, 1917. And I have to thank my friend Stan from New York City. He's a good buddy of mine who sends me these things from time to time. Stan's an intellectual, and he finds this stuff and he sends it to me. So he sent this to me, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Is it fair to criticize police officers? And then I'm going to, the latest thing we heard yesterday is there's a new assault on affirmative action. Are you opposed to affirmative action? What's your thoughts about affirmative action? We got Ray on line 1. Yes, Ray.
How are you doing today?
Good.
I'm going to try to go down a list and just precisely give my opinions on the points that you brought up.
Okay.
Number one, just from a completely off-the-wall observation, I personally think you should just call it the Rudy Howard Show. You speak for yourself, and you speak for yourself very well, but it's almost at times some people get the idea that you claim that you were speaking for all African Americans, and I don't think that's what you're trying to attempt to do. Number two, and I was in the middle of calling, so I might be out of order here, but asking whether, supporting Donald Trump, conflicts with your Christian values, I guess the same question could be asked if you're, supporting Hillary Clinton. Does it, clash with your Christian values? So I think there's just way too many answers to that that can go either way. As far as the Affordable Health Care Act, I think it's collapsing under its own weight. It's going to have to be replaced or tuned up at some point. And I'd rather take care of things early than take care of things late. As far as affirmative action, I'm not really fond of any system that we start leaning more and more toward a government, a system that's based on entitlements. So
you see affirmative action as an entitlement?
I don't. There's not all of it, but there are parts of it that I have issues with. College enrollment, where you can have somebody that I think scholarships should be handed out by grades and academic achievement.
Never have been. They never have been. They have, all college admissions are not based on grades and rank in class. It's just not. Let me give you an example. Harvard. People have the impression, and I happen to know this because I know 2 people that graduated from Harvard. People are under the impression that if you went to Harvard, you were at the top of your class or you didn't get in. Not true. Harvard believes in well-rounded students. So there's always C students that get admitted to Harvard because Harvard believes the development of the student is as important as the development of the mind. So they want to make sure that the student has to interact and interface with people from all walks of life. Legacy is affirmative action. Well, I mean, legacy, and now watch this. Now here's the part you got to get, Ray. In 1960, when I was not able to go to one of the major universities in the United States, because they wouldn't let you in back then, if you went to the University of Michigan and you were a graduate of the University of Michigan, and your kid comes along, you got legacy. So now that kid is going to get one-upsmanship against my kid, who is going to apply to University of Michigan, but because I couldn't go there, that kid gets a leg up on me.
I don't agree with that either. So
Well, okay, but you know that exists, right?
sure.
Yeah, legacy exists. Now, and then I'm going to give you one more, just so that you understand. Well, first of all, let me explain to you personally how I feel. I hate affirmative action. And the reason why I hate it is because I was an athlete and I was a competitor, and I never thought any guy was better than me. And I wanted to beat him like a drum with my own ability. But I am wise enough and worldly enough to accept the fact that affirmative action has to exist because the field is not balanced. As much as I don't like it, I accept that it is absolutely necessary. Now let me make this last point because I think it's important. If your kid is in high school and it comes time for the SAT, and you can put your kid in a $3,500 SAT prep class, and my kid's poor, and he can't get in any kind of prep class, is that a fair, equitable competition going toward admission to college?
So you punish the child because his parents were successful.
No, that's not a punishment. I'm not suggesting.
Well, I'm sorry. If your kid gets in because he was poor, the other one is not going to get in because his parents were successful. That's punishing that kid.
Nope.
Because his parents were successful.
I'm not suggesting that kid be. I'm not suggesting that
if
kid.
If you're looking at one side of the equation where your child is not getting in because you didn't have the money to give him that $3,500 class, the other side of that equation is that child won't get in because his parents were successful.
I'm not suggesting that. But I'm not suggesting that the kid not get in. But what I am suggesting to you is that the scale can be balanced by a kid who's socioeconomically disadvantaged competing against a kid that was economically advantaged. I'm not suggesting that kid should be punished. But by the same token, I'm saying to you, don't put your head in the sand and say everything is equal and fair and it should be based on merit when actually admissions are not always based on merit.
My head is not in the sand, and I understand that admission is not always based on merit, but I don't think that we should get to a point where merit is not taken into consideration.
Well, you got to take it into consideration. You can't get into college without it's got to be some merit in part of the process. You don't think you don't think that they just let people get in?
Okay, well, who decides how much merit and how much affirmative action?
Schools do, and what's wrong with that?
Nothing, as long as they apply a given set of values and rules and they stick to them.
Okay. All right. So we don't have an argument then. It's okay for them to make that application. Listen. All I'm saying.
I understand, but I have to, and I certainly did not grow up affluent. I myself did not go to college, but it's like I said, it's there's always the other side to the equation. If you look at that, because if you get down to it, what they're doing at that college is they're looking at somebody, and I understand there's people who have had financial hardships and stuff, and it's a pretty cold person that doesn't take that into consideration on a daily basis. But you also have to take into consideration the other side of that equation, and there's always another side to an equation. Wouldn't you agree, Rudy?
Yes, and I'm acknowledging that. I listen. I don't think the kids' parents who can afford the $3,500 prep class, I don't think that kid should be punished. But here's the reality, okay, Ray? If that kid aces his SAT, he's going to have lots and lots of options. So if he doesn't get his first option, he's going to have a second and a third option, okay? Versus the kid that didn't have the $3,500 course, he's not going to have as many options. So I don't want to punish the kid that was able to have the class, but by the same token, it is in our best interest as a society to help that kid who didn't have the $3,500 to be able to be successful and become a tax-paying citizen.
I understand. I do. But when it comes right down to it, these universities and these colleges and stuff, these scholarships that they get out, they don't go to the teachers, they don't go to the staff, say, okay, we had this many scholarships this year, so you're only going to get this amount. What happens is that money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just you don't just snap your fingers and wave some pixie dust and the money to pay for all that stuff comes. All of these social programs, they come from somewhere. Somebody pays for them, and that's what I was talking about when I was saying I'm uncomfortable with a society that is leaning as far as we are leaning toward, entitlements taking care of everything. It's.
Okay, well, I have to let you go, Ray. My board is backing up, but thank you for calling.
Have a nice evening.
Okay, you too. And we got Steve on line too. Yes, sir.
Hey, Rudy, you baited me in, didn't you?
Oh, I wasn't trying to bait you in.
You tried to, anyway.
Okay.
Hey, think about the college. What's the biggest now debt in the United States?
College tuition.
That's right. So we're really doing a good job by college, providing people with a way to make a living and become taxpayers. That's not working.
It's not working?
It's not working. It's not working. And if you know anything about colleges right now, even if you get in as a freshman in a state college, grades are weighted right now. A lot of kids got to have 4 O's to get in a freshman year. And if they don't have 4 O's, they're not going to get in a freshman year. So they can go to a junior college or they can go somewhere else to get into state college, but it's really hard. But since the national debt
depends on what school you apply to.
Well, that's true, and that's the case right there. You are trying to make a point. Well, just because it's college, and this successful college or Harvard or whatever. If they're accumulating a debt, they're creating probably more problems for society as a whole by what we'll have to do. So, college is really not the answer.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. Because
why not?
And I'll tell you why. College has become a place where, as you were talking about, they're concerned about the whole person and relating to the world, and that's the case. They want to. In fact, when I went with my kids went to University of Central Florida, and both of them graduated with a degree. But they checked out Florida, and when the kids go up there, 18 years old, and I'm paying the bill. They have a guy come up and say, hey, your kids are 18 years old now. They're on their own. We don't even have to send you your grades. You don't have to know. I'm putting the bill, and I don't even have to get the grades. Then they tell those kids that once they turn 20 or so, or 18, 19, 21, they can take out a student loan. We're creating a system right now that's imploding in itself because it's not working and it's not creating what you think it's creating, and that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah. So what do you think? What do you think the alternative is?
The alternative is basically trade schools. There should be no trying to devalue your upbringing and by putting you in situations and taking away your religion.
Oh, I see where we're
going.
No,
listen to my point.
I see where we're going here.
No, you don't see where I'm going.
Yes, I do. Go ahead. I can hear you. I'm following you down the path.
No. We're paying. By the debt, we're paying. We create professors that are teaching courses that the evidence is proving that the debt is getting higher and higher, even though they're provided with the money to go to school. I would rather see them earn their way through college, bring down college prices, by making it competitive, by not just having government and loans go into it, but the kids work their way through their education. There's no trade out there that shouldn't be able to be learned in 5 to 7 years.
Listen, let me say this to you. I'm glad you went off that path you were going down.
No,
you
not.
You caught yourself. I'm glad you didn't do it. I'm glad you didn't do it. I saw you going down there, and you heard me call you out on it, and you took a little right turn right off that path, and I appreciate that because I was going to jump all over you when you did that. So you saved me. You saved yourself from me jumping on you. But let me say this to you. Part of the conservative mantra for this past election was, we need somebody in the White House that's going to be tough, macho, because the other guy didn't have, he wasn't dogmatic enough. He wasn't bodacious enough. So we need somebody in there tough. You know what? You guys have missed the train.
Nope.
You missed the train. Now, let me finish. Let me tell you why you missed the train. What happened was we had a cyber attack. So we had people messing with us through cyberspace. So now, how does being tough and bravado solve the cyberspace problem? Does not. So what you need is you're gonna listen to me first. So what we need is people that are trained in computers and technology to help keep us safe. Building more aircraft carriers and more planes shows we have machines to show, but that's not going to keep us safe. What's going to keep us safe are people that are smart enough to diagnose some of the technical issues that are going to threaten us.
Well, what would I disagree with there?
Oh, okay, well, I know there's nothing to disagree with. So that kind of defeats your argument about saying that we don't need people to go to college.
No, I said they would go to trade school. They would go and learn a profession. They would go and I mean, it shouldn't take a person 15 years to become a doctor. It shouldn't take 12 years to become an engineer. If you're in the field, there's a school, Stetson, in the center of the state. All their professors that they have at that school are from the fields that they teach. They're not professors that teach outside the field. They teach within the field that they know. And see, what we've got educated people trying to educate people when they haven't been educated in the field that they're in a lot of ways. And plus, the first 4 years of college, the first 2 are only review of high school.
You're sure?
I'm a graduate from college, so
that was your interpretation of college the first 2 years.
The first, yes.
Oh, okay.
Taking trigonometry over again and taking American history over again, and then you could throw in some art appreciation and taking humanities courses and learn about the Bhagavad Gita and all these other stuff that we learned, But all that stuff, basically all of it, I'd have in high school.
Okay.
So it was a review for the first 2 years.
Okay. Well, I guess we're really not disagreeing because, well, I think our priorities are out of whack though, because we're out here. We just put the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier out. That cost $13 billion.
Yeah.
We got
where did
three.
Where did that money go? Where did that money go? $13 billion. Where did it go?
Well, and we got 3
People
more
were working on it.
We got 3 more on the drawing board that are going to cost about $44 billion. So now we're saying that we need to invest in education. We should be having a program in this country where we're sending kids for the first 2 years of school at little or no cost. That's what we should be doing.
Rudy.
That's what we should be doing instead of building aircraft carriers.
Rudy, you can't. You can't. My wife's a teacher. I'm tell you that parents are not parents anymore.
What?
In a lot of ways.
What's this now?
Parents don't raise their kids to respect other people. Parents, and I'm not saying all, but there's you talk to teachers in the education system, they're saying that the kids that we're getting over a period of time, it's harder for us to get them to a level. I mean, it's hard. It really is hard. Education was probably better in the 50s and 60s for people coming out of high school than it is now.
Well, I'm not going to agree with that.
Well,
because when I think of the 50s and 60s, I don't have the same picture of the 50s and 60s that you have.
Well, I have a picture of Lincoln Park being the number one school in the state.
Well,
for the black, Lincoln Park was the number one football team in the state.
Well, we
used to go to the games at Lincoln Park at night when they had the J.C. Field over here on U.S. Lawn by the golf course.
You ain't gonna change my mind. You ain't gonna change my mind about that, because when you say 50s and 60s, I have a different vision in my mind of 50s and 60s than you do, and that's etched in.
My grandmother had a store. I'm from Fort Pierce. My grandmother's from Fort Pierce, so she had a store that was 3 blocks away from Avenue D. I know what this place was like. I used to play over toward Avenue D with my kids. My kids, we play together. Your idea of the 50s may be different, but let me make one point. In logic, it's a bad idea to use yourself as an example for justification of something else. And the reason that...
What are you talking about?
Listen.
What are you talking about?
I'm going to tell you. The reason you don't want to try to use yourself for an example is elevate your experiences over somebody else's, or value somebody else's experiences. And what I'm trying to say is this. When we talk about trying to find solutions, if we say personal experience is the key, then you're going to have confusion all the way across the board. Humans can't agree on a lot of things. And you see things differently. You use the word diversity. Talk about diversity and how diversity is a good thing. Diversity can be a terrible thing. Get some Ku Klux Klan guys together with some Black Lives Matter guys. That's how much diverse can you get? Diversity, when it's positive, yes, it works great. But diversity is not the key. It's the relationship of humans to humans. Diversity is not the key.
That's not true.
Oh, okay. You tell me what is.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to. This could go on for a long time, but what I'm going to tell you is this: diversity is important, because if you have an organization and you want your organization to grow, what you have to have is a mixture of ideas and opinions that help to make your organization a full organization. Okay. So it is very possible, if you're trying to sell soda pop and you're selling soda pop and you're a white person that developed a soda pop company, and you see that there's an opportunity to sell soda pop in the black community, you better have somebody in the black community that's going to tell you about how to enter into that market and what would attract black people to buy your soda pop. Okay. That's diversity. And that's how that works.
Wait a minute.
Wait, let me finish. I'm going to tell you another diversity. If you got a police department that is predominantly white policing a predominantly black neighborhood, that's a prescription for disaster.
Rudy, I have to laugh at that, because last time I called you, you used an example of a Bronx police officer, and the next week a guy walked up to a black police officer, shot her and killed her in the Bronx. It wasn't a white officer, and you were telling me how the Bronx officers, hey, if he's white, he's never had any experience, and the next week, Rudy,
what does that have to do?
Make one point clear.
That doesn't have anything to do with what I said.
One point, and I'll let you go. I'll let you go, and you can cut me down or whatever you want.
Okay.
black people can't be so much different than white people. If they're so much different than white people, what do we need? Do we have to have a different legal system, different everything for that, or do we have to have only courts that when white people are on it? You know, if black people are so much different than other people, just think about how you're going to go about trying to create the rules of engagement for this thing called diversity that you think so great. How are you going to make that work? Because you got to get these people over here to understand these people over here. So you got to make rules because those people are so much different over there that you can't understand them. So we got to, I agree. Working together, yes.
You know what? I'm going to take a break because right now, Steve, you're babbling, and you're not making sense because you're trying to defend the indefensible. But I always appreciate you calling. But I'm going to take a break. Don't touch that dial because we'll be right back with the African American scene. Want to call in? That number is 340-1590.
Serving the entire Treasure Coast, Howard Insurance and Associates in Port St. Lucie offers a wide variety of insurance products, along with the very best customer service. Whether you're shopping for the best homeowners coverage at the most affordable value, contact Rudy Howard's team at Howard Insurance and Associates. If you need coverage for your vehicle, call Howard Insurance and Associates, 343-9878. That's 343-9878. Maybe you're planning to add a boat, motorcycle, or RV. Call Howard Insurance and Associates for your free quote at 343-9878 and get the coverage you need at a cost that will fit your budget. For home or business, auto or recreational vehicle, choose Howard Insurance and Associates, 600 Southwest Darwin Boulevard, Suite 206, Port St. Lucie. And for your free rate quote, call them at 343-9878, 343-9878. WPSL Digital 1590 presents CBS Storm Track Weather.
Hey, Treasure Coast, this is CBS 12 meteorologist Jeff Baradelli. Still tracking some scattered showers and even a couple of thunderstorms on the radar. Those will die down overnight tonight, but it stays warm and muggy, lows in the 70s. Big changes for your Thursday and Friday. A large area of dry air is going to overtake most of Florida. That means lots of sun, a limited chance of just a couple of spotty showers, but it's going to be hot because of all that sun. High temperatures in the low to mid-90s. I'm CBS 12 meteorologist Jeff Baradelli in the CBS 12 Storm Track Center for WPSL Digital 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Thank you, Jeff. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. WPSL Digital 1590 and News 12, the ones to turn to on the Treasure Coast for up-to-date weather and news.
Now back to the African American scene, and the phones are ringing, Rudy.
Yeah, and we got Bob on line one. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Howard. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Okay. I disagree very much with your affirmative action thoughts.
Okay.
And that's mainly from a personal view.
Okay.
I'm a 75-year-old man.
Okay.
Back in the 60s, I worked as a bricklayer.
Okay.
Apprentice. Not a bricklayer apprentice. I took about a year off, and the boss said, come back whenever you want. Your job is open for you. And I came back about a year later, and I went to the boss, and I told him, all right, I'm ready to come back to work. He says, I'm sorry, I can't hire you because I had to hire 2 blacks to keep my city contracts. Now, to me, that's discrimination or reverse discrimination. I lost out on a job, which paid very well in New York, because they had to give it to 2 guys that really didn't know about the job, according to the boss.
You were off for a whole year, and you came back, and you feel that you were put upon because 2 blacks got hired and they wouldn't hire you. You were off for a year.
Right.
Okay.
And I was promised the job back. That's why I took off the year.
Okay. All right. I understand emotionally how you feel about that. But you took off a year. that does make a big difference.
Yeah, with the boss's blessing. And my job was supposed to be there when I got back. But it couldn't be because he did city work in New York. And the city would not let him go back without a certain amount of black. Now, that's not just the only point. According to the boss and his son, who I went and had lunch with, the guys didn't know what they were doing. I knew what I was doing because I worked there.
Okay.
Why should they have to hire people that don't know opposed to somebody that did know?
Oh, my goodness. Bob, that was done all the time.
Yes, it was.
All the time. Back in the day, it was done all the time.
And that don't make it right.
No, and I could let me give you an example. Okay. In the 1950s and 60s, the only people that were caddies on a professional golf tournament were black guys. All black guys.
At one time, I remember that.
You remember that, right?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. So when the money got good for caddies, what happened to the black guys? The black guys had already demonstrated that they were proficient and knew what they were doing, but they all lost their jobs. Was that fair?
Was it fair? I don't know. I don't think it was fair, no.
Oh, okay, because they knew what they were doing. They had been doing it for years.
Right, but it's not fair. And actually, I'll agree it's not right.
Okay.
But that's life. First of all, let's go back to them days if you do want to go back there with golf. Most of them people hired their own relatives, their kids, their cousins, their uncles. And they had every right to do that. I would take my family over. I would take anybody.
Okay.
You know, and that was mainly a family thing.
And that is why cities, I can tell you my uncle, who might be listening tonight, got into the air conditioning business because the city was requiring that they give an opportunity some of the African Americans that live in the city. Now, if you are, let's just take New York City for example. If you have a population in New York City of, let's just say, 7% African Americans, and there's zero African American bricklayers, zero.
Right.
You think that's right?
Do I think it's right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right or wrong. It depends on why they didn't have jobs to begin with. And I don't believe you when you say they just weren't given jobs because they were black.
Oh, you don't think that? Okay,
no, I don't believe that.
That's always the problem, because when I tell you things like that, you don't believe that happens.
No,
and if you don't believe that happens, we're in a hopeless situation.
I'll tell you what, I believe what I see. Being brought up in New York as a youngster, as a young teenager, I was brought up in the days of gangs and everything, and all the gangs were diversified. It's who lived in the neighborhood that was in the gangs, and it's who lived in the neighborhoods that had the jobs. And most people didn't discern black or white. It was the neighborhood that decided it.
I got to let you go because I got some other calls, but thank you for calling, Bob.
All right.
Sam. Yes, Sam.
Rudy.
Yes.
Listen, I haven't spoken to you in a while, but the diversity conversation just kind of sparked my interest. I've been listening to you religiously almost every week. And, you know, our listening audience look at diversity as a black and white issue. And
Yes.
it isn't.
It isn't.
You know, all of our institutions chronicle what our ethnicity is. In many instances, they will even get into the other areas of diversity. But diversity is all of us as a salad bowl society. And we have to really, as a people, as an American, try and figure out in the 21st century, what do we want to look like when we grow up?
Amen.
And that's a diverse society. I work with blind people, and I look at individuals with disabilities. They tend to be discriminated against and need to be protected by affirmative action. We look at, when you fill out a government form, when you go to college or something like that, they ask you all these different questions about ethnicity. I can't tell you how many times I've seen black people say that they were white or that they were something other than what they were because they felt as though they would be discriminated against because of what they really were. And, it tends to be a shame that we are still in these situations where we look at individuals, with just looking at them and saying, and all of a sudden doing the stereotypical thing and saying, oh, well, I've seen that before, and that's not comfortable to me. Yeah. And that's really where it lies in your comfort zone. And you look at all the institutions. I went to a traditional black university in Langston University, which was under a separate but equal doctrine, a lot like Florida State and FAMU. And they were supposed to be able to have the same state funding, but here you have a population at one university that is, 60,000, and you have another one that's 7,000. So, and these institutions came out of 1870 something, 1890 something. So how does that happen? That happens because individuals feel very comfortable about being around like people. They're the same. Absolutely. They want to be the same.
Let me give you the perfect affirmative action program. I think it is the absolute perfect. What the NFL did with the Rooney Rule.
With the Rooney Rule. There you go.
The only thing Rooney said was, if you're going to interview for another coach, you must include a person of color.
Right.
And look, we got all of these coaches now in the NFL of color because when they had the opportunity to go in and sit down with these owners and the owners talked to them, they said, oh, man, I think this guy can help us.
Right.
Without the Rooney Rule, they would have only did what you were just talking about. They would have talked to the people that looked like them.
They were very comfortable with.
They were comfortable with.
They went to the same church.
Yep.
They ate the same foods. Culturally, they were identical. And you'll see that. You'll see that. And really globally, I'm not just talking about America. I mean, you find where other countries don't practice diversity because it's not very comfortable to them, even though they represent. It was very interesting to hear you talk about the Coca-Cola sales in the black community. Yeah. But I think that's what happens is that we look at diversity as just being black and white. But we represent the totality. And if you are a business person, the only thing you really should be thinking about is the color green.
There you go.
It should be strictly about, am I going to be able to stay in business because the community that I'm representing is either the gay community or it could be, Latin community. It could be a number of different types of communities because we're all right here. And you know something, Rudy? We're not going anywhere.
You're right, Sam.
So we really need to just kind of embrace and celebrate our diversity, opposed to trying to, just ignore it.
Sam, thank you for the call. I got another call waiting. Appreciate hearing from you, buddy.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. And we got Jay. Jay, how are you, sir?
Yeah, Rudy, could you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very good topic. I was thinking as you were talking, we were talking about the caddies. I remember that because when as a youngster, I used to go down to Savannah, Georgia, and one of my cousins was a caddy, and he was one of the best there in Savannah. But the irony was, in some of those courses, they wouldn't let black players play.
That's right.
Charlie Sifford, some of the best black golfers back in those days, could not play at Augusta. They weren't allowed. So your caller forgot to, mention that, and he forgot. I think a lot of white folk with the white privilege, they forget about all those things. They forget about how this country, what it was designed for. How it was designed for second-class citizens. Now I'll just bring this up, this last topic, and I think it's very important. Most people here don't even know. In the New York City Fire Department, they had a system where it was just like you were talking about the legacy thing. The son of a guy was working for the fire department, the NY Fire Department, New York City Fire Department. His son, his nephew, his grandson, they all get on the fire department because they disseminate the test to the youngsters, and they make it easy for them to get on. And plus, they have that connection because the father was there, and it's like. They didn't accept and they didn't make it easy for people of color to get on, and it was like that for years. 5 years ago, the Vulcan Society, which is a black organization, black firefighters, sued the city for $100 million and won. And so now they have a system where they got women, African Americans, Hispanics, all on the New York City Fire Department. They broke that chain. But it went on for as long as I was living in New York. It was always that way, and everybody knew about it, but nobody did anything until 5 years ago. And that's part of white privilege. But it's never talked about. And a lot of fire departments around this country, right here in St. Lucie County, they have that same attitude.
Jay,
and it goes on and on and on until somebody breaks it.
I remember that, Jay, when I lived there. But you know what I want you to speak to? Yeah. Bob said that he doesn't believe, and you were in New York, he doesn't believe that there was discrimination against blacks bricklayers.
It's always been at every agency. You had to, even when I became a supervisor when I was working in the area I was working in, you had to be 10 times better than the average, white guy for being a supervisor. You had to take a lot of nonsense. You had to, you had to cross all your T's, dot every I. Everything had to be perfect. And if you were bringing somebody up on charges, and if they were, Italian or Irish, you had to bend over backwards, not to take time away from them, take money out of their pockets. You had to find another way of disciplining them. It was all kind of little games they would play, but the union was very strong, so I had the backing of the union, and that's what broke that. The back of that, they wanted everybody to be treated the same. If you broke the rules, you get punished the same, not just blacks get fired or get 10 days suspended without pay, or the others just get a slap on the wrist. They stopped that. But that was all part of the game. I don't understand. So many people are living in a dream world, and they forget about all the privileges they had when they were growing up. The guy that's 75 years old, he's up there with me. He knows what was going on back in the 50s.
But no, he doesn't, Jay. Honest to God, I believe him. Yeah. I believe it. Now, my wife says I'm naive. I truly believe that he doesn't think that problem exists because he was in his bubble, Jay.
Yeah.
He was in his bubble.
Well, you got to understand the mentality of some people like that. Like right now, with all of these so-called Trump supporters, these are what they call working-class white folk, like nobody else works. It's just kind of sad when you listen to them. And everybody's struggling out here. Everybody's trying to make it. Wages are down. They haven't been up in the last since Reagan. And the rich get richer and the poor get poor. So it's not, it's not the people of color, like they think that's coming and taking their jobs. They just have to stand up and fight back and have strong unions instead of giving up the unions and not supporting unions, especially in places like Detroit and Michigan and and Cleveland, where they have all those plants and places. They should have stood up and not give in. And not let the corporate people just deny, and Reagan, eliminating unions with the air traffic controllers. That's how it started. And now today, I think it's about 15% of this country is unionized.
It's way down.
I think it's
way
that's how low
down.
It is.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you up, man. I know you're getting ready to leave, so I just wanted to give my little take of what's going on in the world.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, have a nice one.
Okay. We had some really interesting phone calls, and I think I like what Sam said. He said, we're a salad bowl. He said, we just got to figure out how to mix the lettuce and the other things all together to make it a pretty salad. I think that's a great picture in our minds about who we are.
When the zucchini doesn't like the summer squash, and when the carrots don't like the broccoli,
Yeah.
well, we just got to mix a little harder, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But I thought it was a very entertaining conversation, and I think I would like to believe that some of the people that had very firm opinions about affirmative action, I think I made them think, because when I said to Bob, you know, all caddies in the 50s and 60s, they were all black. He said, yes, I remember that. There was no white caddies. That was all black. They were all professionals. They had learned how those courses work, the yardage, the reading. They were top of the game, and they got wiped out once the money came in. Hey, that's kind of been the story of too many things in black folks' lives, and I could name you some more.
Well, there's things that have happened all these years that folks basically just don't know about and don't understand what it's like to go through those things.
No, they don't.
And when people have treated you badly for generation after generation, it's hard to pull out of it. But we're seeing it happen, though, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so.
The children of today are way ahead of us, so we ought to follow them.
Yeah.
Follow their lead. Wow.
I think so. But I think that it's the kids on the coastlines of Florida are really the forerunners. On the East Coast and the West Coast, in the cities, those kids are really pressing forward and changing the tempo of things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning into the African American scene. God bless and be safe, and I'll see you next week right here. And I'm going to save some of these topics because we never got to them, and we'll talk about them next week.
The African American Scene with Rudy Howard, brought to you by Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie. Tune in every Wednesday evening in the 6 o'clock hour for the African American Scene, and look for the archives on YouTube. Simply go to www.WPSLTV.com on the World Wide Web. The African American Scene with Rudy Howard.